topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thanks, everybody, for joining in again today. I am Kevin Hallinan, and welcome back to Winning Business TV and Radio on W4CY.com. We're streaming live on Talk4TV.com. That's the number 4. In addition to being on Facebook Live, that's at Winning Business Radio. And of course, we're available in podcast after the live show on all those platforms you're familiar with: YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, pretty much wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. The mission of this show, Winning Business Radio and TV, as regular viewers and listeners know, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others, right? To learn best practices, the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, to be challenged and to be hopefully inspired by the successes of others. Those are the consultants, coaches, advisors, authors, founders and owners, entrepreneurs, people with expertise. But, you know, virtually every successful person I've ever had a chance to talk to has had some form of failure in their lives and careers. So while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I always say I'm driven to keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. Let's endeavor to learn from history so we don't repeat it. I've spent the better part of my career equipping businesses to grow, from solopreneurs to small and medium-sized companies, all the way up to the Fortune 50. I've seen some of those companies win, and to varying degrees, I've seen some fail. I've had the opportunity to rub elbows with some of the highest performing people around and with some folks who probably should have found other professions. In my own businesses, I've had lots of success, but some failures too. I like to think I've learned a lot from those experiences. So every week I say this. You'll hear from me, my opinions and insights, because anybody who knows me will tell you that I sometimes have a hard time being quiet. Tim. But more importantly, together we'll hear from experts, those consultants, coaches, advisors, authors, founders and owners, entrepreneurs. Today is an attorney. In fact, my guest is Tim Kenneally, employment law attorney and shareholder of Foley and Foley PC. Here's his bio. Attorney Tim Kenneally has practiced law since 1994, first with the firm of Healy and Healy PC and with Foley and Foley PC since 2008. Tim's been a litigator his entire career. His practice involves the representation of clients in matters involving employment and labor law, data security and personal information protection, insurance, contracts, and litigation. Attorney Kenneally has successfully resolved hundreds of cases in the state and federal courts at the MCAD, that's the Mass Council Against Discrimination. Mass Council Against Discrimination, at the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and before other administrative agencies. He's negotiated, drafted, and enforced a multiple of employment and business contracts for firm clients. Tim is a past president of the Tri-Town Chamber of Commerce in Mansfield. That's from 2014 to 2016. He's currently a member of its board of directors. He was vice president of the Rotary Club of Foxborough in 2016 and is former member of the Economic Development Committee and of the Advisory Committee for the town of Foxborough, Massachusetts. His affiliations include the U.S. Supreme Court in 2002, the United States District Court as of 95, and he's a member of the Mass Bar as of 93, the Kentucky Bar as of 23, and the Pennsylvania State Bar as of 2015. Tim earned his undergraduate degree at the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Mass. in 1990, his law degree at the Suffolk University Law School, Boston, Mass. in 1993. Tim and his wife, Kimberly, reside in Foxborough, Mass. They have a daughter, Shannon, who's 19, a son, Sullivan, who's 18, and they have a dog named Tucker. Tim, welcome to Winning Business Radio. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Kevin. Glad to be here.
So let's jump right in. Tell us a bit about your family. Start with the lovely Kimberly.
Well, my wife is also a lawyer by trade, but does not wisely does not practice it. She moved on to bigger and better things and works for Morgan Stanley.
Oh, cool.
And as I mentioned, I have a daughter, Shannon. She's a sophomore at the University of Alabama.
Wow.
And
They
my son
had a
is
big win against Georgia, right? They did.
Very excited. Yes, she called us in elation. So it was a big night.
Yeah. My buddy from Georgia is not so. He's a Tim also. He's not so happy right now.
Can't win them all, right? And then my son is a freshman at the University of New Hampshire.
Cool.
So,
and what are they studying?
My daughter is studying criminal psychology. She has an interest in joining the federal government in a law enforcement capacity. And my son is studying finance.
Oh, cool. Very good. And you have a dog named Tucker. Growing up, our Cocker Spaniel was Tucker. So what kind of dog is Tucker?
It's a Boston Terrier.
Oh, yeah.
And
Cool.
very active.
That's
Very
a cool breed.
active.
That's a cool breed. All right. So tell us where you grew up.
I grew up in Canton, Massachusetts.
Yeah, we won't get into that, but Canton's in the news a lot lately. ... We won't get into that. Everybody in the country knows where Canton, Massachusetts is now.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. When I lived there, I thought I was nowhere, but
I know, right?
it's become someplace.
So tell us about that upbringing. What was it like to grow up in Canton? Smaller
So
town.
it was, it's a small town. Primarily, I went to private schools, so I didn't really go to the public schools in town. I ended up going to high school in Dorchester, Massachusetts at Boston College High School. So I didn't get the full Canton experience, but it was a nice place to live. People were friendly back then. I can't speak for it now. I haven't lived there in 30 plus years. So it seems like it's become a different place than where I grew up.
So we have one son. We have four kids. All four went to private. You've probably heard this before. All four went to private school. One of them went to Boston Latin School. I think you had a really more diverse upbringing. You saw more, you're maybe more street smart, more savvy, having gone to BC High in Dorchester. So I think you benefited from that. At least that's my guess. But at BC High, you played football, ran track, and you were on the student council.
Yes. Yeah, I did. And it was a great choice. I originally didn't want to go there. It was kind of far from home, and I didn't know very many people that were going there.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad that I did. It was an exceptional school, and I did get to meet a wide variety of people, learned how to travel on the train and, navigate the big city.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience for me. I'm glad I did it.
And when did you know, or maybe, I don't know, I won't even editorialize. You got a bachelor's of arts in English. So 2 questions. When did you know you wanted to major in English, and what made you choose Holy Cross?
Well, I had a cousin who was 4 years older than me, who went to Holy Cross, raved about it. And I just went out there and visited and really liked it. It was a beautiful campus with, it's an inviting environment, and it was good academic school. I was fortunate to get in there, and pretty much was my first choice coming out of high school. Although, actually, I should say I did want to go to Notre Dame, but got waitlisted. So,
would you have been blackballed? I know that BC High is not really affiliated with Boston College, but would you have been blackballed because there's such a rivalry between Holy Cross and BC?
Back then, probably.
Yeah.
My freshman year was the last time we played Boston College in a competitive football game.
Yeah,
so
I would say the word competitive is sadly true. Let's see. So you played, this is interesting. You played rugby, club rugby, and intramural hockey. Tell us about those experiences at college.
So I'd never heard of rugby before, and I went to my first rugby practice not knowing anything about it.
Mm.
I got invited by some friends who knew that I'd played football in high school, and I just fell in love with it. It was just a fun game with a lot of the athletic requirements that I had learned over the years about,
Yeah.
tackling and handling the ball, and it was very similar to football in that respect. And just loved it. It was really a lot of fun, and it was competitive. We had a really good team, and we got to travel the world. I went to Ireland, I went to
Cool.
England, I went to the Bahamas. I got to play, in other parts of the country. It was great, and really helped me to learn about other cultures that I probably wouldn't have learned about if I hadn't taken up the sport. And then I still watch it on TV now. I love it.
Someday you'll have to explain the rules to me. I know there's whatever. It's a little confusing if you don't know what you're doing. And hockey, you still play hockey, right?
Yeah, and I may have to hang it up. The hip is starting to really bother me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been playing hockey for a long time. I started skating at about 5 years old, and got into intramurals at Holy Cross because I was working as the Zamboni driver at the hockey rink.
That's got to be the best job. I
It,
didn't know that.
It was a great job. I really loved it, and I was up there all the time, and I just figured, all right, well, play some intramurals while I'm working in between shifts and things. And then I took over the program, and I ran the intramural program for 2 years. It was great. And then I just kept playing. I played in men's leagues after college, right up until, in competitive games until about 5-6 years ago. And now I just periodically skate with some friends.
Yeah.
But I love it, and I wish I could do more of it, but the body isn't cooperating as much as it used to. So
we all know that story. So Tim, when did you know you wanted to practice law, and why did you choose Suffolk?
Okay, well, so at Boston College High School, I took a business law class, and the teacher told me that I had an aptitude for the law. So that piqued my interest. My cousin that I told you about before that went to Holy Cross, he ended up going to law school and is a lawyer now. My uncle was a lawyer. My cousin is a lawyer. My other cousin's a lawyer. And so it just was part of the family. And so I just was introduced to it at an early age. And my dad really wanted to go to law school, but unfortunately couldn't afford it and didn't go. Became a probation officer instead.
Oh yeah.
So, it was something that I thought would make him proud of me, which I think it did. And I just wanted to do it probably right out of high school.
Wow.
I took English in college because I wanted to be a good writer and articulate, and thought that was a good choice for law school. And I chose Suffolk, frankly, because it was a local school.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to live and work around here, and it was less expensive than some of the other schools I got into that I was paying for it. Budget was a budget, right? So,
but also a very good school with a great reputation, good education.
Yeah. And, it's become a really, really great school. It was a good school when I was there, and I learned a lot, and I got a lot of good experience because they have really good internships and opportunities like that. But it's grown. They built the new facility. They've got really high level professors now. The reputation has gone way up. And that's something I'm really proud of. I'm glad I went there.
Fantastic. Hey, we're going to take our first break right here. Tim will be back in about a minute. Everybody else will be back in about 1 minute with Tim Kenneally of Foley and Foley PC. Be right back.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamt of being on the radio? Well, now is your chance. Be a radio show guest on the #1 ranked internet radio station and promote you and your business for free. Yes, you heard it, free. Business advertising right here on W4CY.com. Call 561-506-4031 now to get booked on one of our shows. That's 561-506-4031. Get your free advertising now.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We're back with Tim Kenneally, attorney at law who specializes in, we'll get into this, employment law, among a few other things, but that's his primary focus. Shareholder and attorney at the firm of Foley and Foley. Tim, before we get into the law, a couple of things to ask and congratulate you about. Cum laude, you graduated cum laude from Suffolk, but you were involved in two programs I want to ask about, the Public Defender Program, and you got an American Jurisprudence Award. If you tell us about those two things.
Sure. So the Public Defender Program was a great experience for me. I had interest in being a litigator, being in court, and that program allowed me to actually directly represent some criminal defendants in court. They were lower level criminal events, but it was an opportunity to get into the courtroom, learn how to argue in front of a judge. I got to try a case in front of the jury. You know, it was fun. And I knew I didn't really want to do criminal law, but I really wanted that experience of being in the courtroom and understanding how to present in front of a judge and a jury. And that gave me that opportunity. So I was proud of that and glad that I had that opportunity. The Jurisprudence Award basically just got the highest grade in property of the other students in my grade level. So nice. That's how I got that.
Perfect. Nothing wrong with that. All right. So summarizing Suffolk, this might be easier. You might have to think about it for a second. What would you arguably say is your most important lesson learned from law school?
Being analytical. It's a general answer, I know, but being able to look at a situation, break it down into its component parts, and sort of analyze a path forward is, I think, an important skill for attorneys, and I've used it now for 30 years. And so I'd say that ability to break down a problem into its component parts and sort of analyze a path to the end result that the client wants is probably a strength of mine and one that I believe I developed at Suffolk Law School.
That's excellent. Good answer. All right, let me get into your employment history a little bit. It's I would argue it's commendable only because, and a bit unusual, 34 years and only 3 firms. The first one was just a short time. But I think that's a testament to you. First as a law clerk, then later attorney at Johnson, Mee and May. Just tell us a little bit about that work, and then I'll ask a similar question. What's your lesson learned or, key takeaway from that first experience?
Sure. So that was an internship initially that I had in law school. It was paid. It was great. They were a high-profile criminal defense firm, and I got to do a lot of pleadings and investigation and there was some court time where I sat with the lawyers and got to get a little bit of experience there. And then I stayed on only for a few months as after I got sworn in to the bar. They were kind enough to let me stick around while I was looking for a permanent job. And I knew I didn't really want to do criminal law.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience as far as courtroom, learning how to argue cases and argue issues and research and present motions and things. So
Excellent. You do a fair amount of criminal courtroom work now, right?
I do.
Yeah. So that had to be
much as I can. Doesn't happen. There's not as many trials anymore as there used to be. So,
is that in general, would you say, or did COVID affect that?
It's in general. It's a situation where the courts are overwhelmed, I believe, with cases, and so 95+% settle. The ones that don't settle are typically, large malpractice cases and things of that nature that get court time. It's hard to get in front of a jury these days. So, when you do, it's for someone like myself, it's a nice experience.
All right. You were at Healy & Healy for 14 years. Tell us about that work.
So that firm focused on insurance defense, which is basically we had relationships with a number of insurance companies, and they hired us to defend their insureds. So I handled all different kinds of cases, slip and fall cases, car accidents, fires, any kind of casualty case that you can think of. That people present a claim to their insurance company, or they sue someone for personal injury. So I was defending a lot of those cases that you see companies advertise. You see law firms advertising on TV about personal injury. I was defending cases against those firms for about 14 years.
And similar question. Key takeaway, or some lesson or lessons that you learned that you still refer to from Healy & Healy from that experience?
Yeah, so in that world, there's a lot more trial time, or at least there was back when I was younger. So I got into court a lot, and got to do a lot of motion practice and arguing in front of the juries and judges, and I tried a lot of cases, and it was great experience in that respect. Also learned a lot about a lot of different kinds of law. When you're doing insurance defense work, you're handling a myriad of cases in all kinds of areas, representing all kinds of different companies and people. And so, I got a sense for all the different kinds of things that were out there and what I liked and what I didn't like. And fortunately, one of the things I really liked was representing businesses and helping them with employee issues and contracts and disputes related to those issues. And that sort of transitioned me into my current position.
Which is a good segue. So you joined Foley and Foley, I didn't write the date down, a number of years ago. 2012, was it?
It was March of 2008.
Oh, 08. Sorry about that. I got that wrong.
That's okay.
So what was behind that decision? It sounds like it was the type of law, but what was behind that decision to leave Healy & Healy and join Foley and Foley?
Well, so, unfortunately, at Healy & Healy was having some struggles at the time. There was sort of a power struggle, and it looked to me like it wasn't long for existence. And I had been there a long time, and I had 2 young children. So I was a little nervous, and I just started looking around. And fortunately for me, the folks at Foley needed a litigator, and they had hired recently another attorney from my firm at Healy who recommended me, and I got the job. So it was great. It was good timing. I got to leave a firm that I really liked, Healy, but I saw the writing on the wall and needed to get out before it sort of fell apart, which it ultimately did. And ended up at Foley and been there for a long, 15 years now.
Yeah.
It's been great.
I was just going to ask a question. So the work that you do now is really summarized. It's employment law, employer side. Everyone probably asks you that. You're representing the employer, not the employee, primarily.
Right.
And they're often, if not always, business owners, right?
Right. Well, I mean, we do some insurance work because our clients sometimes have insurance, so we work with the insurance companies as well. But primarily, we are working on behalf of the business owner. We deal a lot with their human resource officers if they have them. But it's primarily working with businesses to help them navigate the various laws that apply to their relationship with their employees. And we do that across the United States. We have clients in many states, and we have licensed attorneys in many states. And it's really quite challenging and fun because we have to know the laws at the federal level, state level, and the local level.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. And there could be overlaps in the same case.
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah, there are two parts of the law I want to get into before we're done, but it seemed to me like there were layers there as well. How do you differentiate for someone that doesn't know the law, a listener or a viewer, between employment law and labor law?
So labor law deals with the union world. It's the National Labor Relations Act is the primary law governing labor law, and the National Labor Relations Board is the primary administrative agency that handles that act. But in the lower level, it's companies that are unionized have collective bargaining agreements, and those agreements govern the relationship between the employer and the employees and their unions. So that's labor
wages and benefits and hours and all kinds of things, right?
Right. And then employment law is typically, while there's some overlap, typically it's dealing with private employers who are not unionized, who must adhere to the local, state, and federal laws that govern their employment relationships.
All right. Quick question, just an opinion here, and this was only because it came up. I saw on the news, or I read something where, the port workers from like New England to, I don't know, as far down as, I don't know, Florida or I don't know where, but all kinds of red on the map, right, that they were showing. And one of the assertions that the union is making is they don't want any technology or like cranes or anything mechanized. What do you think of that? Is that more of a positioning statement than what they actually want, do you think, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the union's job is to represent the workers and ensure as many people are employed as possible in the workplace, right? So if you mechanize, you're obviously going to cut jobs, and so the union has to push to prevent the loss of jobs. Now, whether it's a bargaining tool is a different issue, but they don't, I'm sure, want there to be any loss of jobs. So I'm sure they're using it to bargain a bit, but I'm also sure that they are fully vested in trying to find a world where, you can mechanize but not cut jobs.
Yeah. I mean, it just seemed, when I read that, it just seemed, maybe I didn't understand it completely, but it just seemed, how do you get rid of cranes at a port? You're going to get 100 guys to lift up a can. I don't know. It just struck me. All right, let's take another break, our second break right here. We'll be back, everybody, in just about a minute with Tim Kenneally of Foley and Foley Law.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
The YP.com website is your local search engine. If you're looking for a good restaurant, it can help you find the right one nearby with ratings and reviews. Or if your car breaks down, you can use the YP app to find the closest repair shop. Or maybe you're just looking for something to do on a Friday night. Well, it has great local coupons for all sorts of things in your area. No matter what, when, or where, if you're looking for something, YP Local Search can help you find it. So go to YP.com or download the app to search local, find local, and save local.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind: to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
All right, we're back with Tim Kenneally, Foley and Foley Law. Tim, a couple of the other areas are contracts. Is that in the normal course of business, like reviewing or preparing contracts for vendors, sellers, et cetera?
So most of the contracts that we do are employment related.
Mm-hmm.
So not all of them, but most of them. I mean, it's employment agreements, shareholder agreements, partnership agreements. So it typically has to do with either the employment relationship or the owner's relationship with one another. And we do things like non-competition agreements and confidentiality agreements, NDAs, and the like. So it's mostly employment related contracts or business contracts for the business itself.
Okay. And then of course litigation when a problem occurs.
Right. We will typically litigate to back up any contract that we create, but also if the clients have a contract dispute, we will represent them in that. Yes.
All right. You also, I saw you had the firm's training division, affirmative action, and HIPAA compliance practices. You want to touch on those for just a moment?
Sure. So we do a lot of training for employers. We train their staff on anything from sexual harassment prevention. We train HR folks in hiring practices. We train on OSHA compliance. We train on pretty much anything that has to do with managing the staff. So we do manager training, investigation training. We do trainings that allow people to pay wages properly. So anything really that has to do with the workplace, we can give a training to whoever the employees are that need that education. I apologize. What were the other?
Yeah, affirmative action and HIPAA. Similar, right?
Yeah. So HIPAA has to do with obviously compliance with the confidentiality of medical records. There's a lot of confusion about where and when HIPAA applies. So we give education to HR folks about that, because a lot of times medical information comes into the workplace for leave
or accommodations.
Matters. Right.
Yeah.
And there's some confusion about when and if HIPAA applies to those scenarios. So we give them an understanding of that. Affirmative action is it only applies to certain businesses and certain sizes, and we create affirmative action programs for those clients as needed, and we try to explain to them the appropriate hiring practices that they need to implement in order to ensure that they are striving for diverse work environment consistent with affirmative action.
So give us a thumbnail on that, and then I've got some other questions, not relative to that. But affirmative action, is it the hiring from the proper or diverse pool, or is it diverse hires, or I mean, what does that really look like?
Sure. So a lot of people think that there are quotas that when you have affirmative action, but there's no quotas. What it is it's a goal to endeavor to hire more diverse workforce. So you look at your existing workforce, you measure it against the available workers in your hiring area, and you determine whether or not you are at or below or perhaps even above the available numbers in the different categories of race, gender, and you basically try to then, if you are low in a category, if you don't have enough female employees perhaps, or enough disabled workers perhaps, you then try to implement strategies for the upcoming year that will enable you to find those workers and attract more of those workers. So the goal of affirmative action is to constantly try to implement new methods of attracting a more diverse workforce, and ultimately, get people hired into a more diverse work environment.
All right. What is the size? And maybe this is an unfair question. You can answer any way you want. The size of a typical client. It sounds like you work with some smaller clients, but also some larger.
So we work with pretty much anybody that has employees. So
Yeah.
as you can imagine, we have some clients that have 2 or 3 employees, and then we have clients that have thousands of employees. And the laws vary by size at times, but there are very similar issues across all levels of employment, with facing issues of wage and hour violations and discrimination, harassment, things of that nature, apply at very small businesses, much like they apply at very large businesses. But then, as you grow in companies, you get covered by more and more laws. So if you have 50 or more employees, for example, you have to adhere to the FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. It's a federal law, and just knowing what laws apply to your business is a difficult task for some employers, especially multi-jurisdictional employers. So that's what we try to provide, is an understanding of what laws apply to your business and how can you comply, and how do you avoid the risk of violating them.
So for multi-jurisdictional, does it matter more where the employer is or where the employee is, or is it not that simple?
Well, it's typically where the employee is. And so it's become more interesting with remote workers, right? I mean, COVID brought about a rise in remote workers. So a business that has one employee working in Wyoming remotely is now a Wyoming employer, and so, they have to understand what Wyoming laws govern that relationship.
I did not realize that. That's a big ripple.
That's why I have a job.
That's right. Keep it up. Keep it up. We like lots of problems. Yeah, no kidding. All right. I do want you to get into 2 areas, and we have plenty of time to dig into these. We have a good 10 minutes here. So attendance management and leave laws, particularly in Mass, but I know that's where you and I are, and we're at least a fair share of our listeners and viewers are. But talk about the kind of things people got to watch out for. I know you give this presentation, but you're also an expert. What do companies need to guard themselves against with regard to attendance management and leave laws?
Sure. So a lot of these laws overlap. So, again, you have FMLA, which is a federal law.
Right.
That can apply let's use Massachusetts as an example, in Massachusetts, but then Massachusetts also has paid family medical leave, which is an FMLA type state law. And so you have to understand how those two work together, and you can run those two leaves concurrently. And you have to understand how you do that and when you do that, because you don't want to have a situation where the worker takes 20 weeks of paid family medical leave and then stacks another 12 weeks of FMLA on the back end of that and is out for 32 protected weeks of time.
Wow.
So you want to have those two leaves run together, and then the maximum leave would be 20 weeks. So we try to explain how that works to clients. But then in addition, there are protections for workers in all these leave laws. And again, I'll give you the example of Massachusetts. That paid family medical leave law has built into it a 6-month window after the leave in which it is presumed retaliation if you take adverse employment action against that worker who's taken a paid family medical leave. Now,
so it doesn't mean there can't be an adverse action against the employee. It just means, go ahead.
It just means you have to have good evidence of a non-leave related, non-paid family medical leave related reason for the adverse action. And, so employers have to document well. That a lot of times it's a performance issue that they're trying to discipline for. And they have to have good records of poor performance, or you can't rebut the presumption of retaliation for that leave.
I'm not a lawyer, but I tell people all the time, document, because I'm around a lot of, in my case, sales organizations, but, there are people coming and going all the time, and some for performance. I always tell them, hey, I don't know, check with your attorney, but you document everything. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah, it's often said, and I think it's true. If it's not documented, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
and people can get paid leave for various reasons. My son and his wife benefited greatly when their 2 kids were born. We never had that. I worked for my father-in-law, and he basically said, "All right, kids born, back to work."
Right. Yeah. Well, I can remember some sleepless nights wondering how I was going to stay awake at work.
No kidding.
So paid family medical leave and other paid leaves in other states are very similar these days, and it's become a wider trend. And you can take bonding leave after the child's born. Typically, if you take the leave within the first 12 months following the birth, which it's a great benefit, and I think it's a great opportunity for parents to bond with their child, but it does take a toll on the business, and navigating those leaves is at times difficult for HR people. So
in particular,
we have a lot of
the
discussions
business, right? The smaller the business, the more impactful, I imagine.
Yeah, especially if you can't replace the person because they've taken a protected leave. So it is difficult. Sometimes you have to hire a temporary worker, or other people have to pick up the slack. But it's I think the most difficult part of an HR job is managing leave.
HR would be an easy job if it wasn't for the employees, right?
I believe that would be true.
Running a business wouldn't be so complicated if it wasn't for the customers. So that people can qualify for various reasons, health issues, in addition to having kids. What are some of the other areas that that employers want to be aware of?
So military leave is a big one, or military related injuries is a big one. So obviously we want to support our wounded warriors and our military personnel. So it's important to understand their rights. There's a federal law called USERRA that also comes into play. So that's a big one. Then you have the Americans with Disability Act, which is a law that protects people with a disability and affords them the right to a reasonable accommodation for their disability that will enable them to perform the essential functions of their job. And that's a tricky one, and employers can sometimes run afoul of that one without any intention whatsoever. So we have a lot of inquiries from clients about ADA compliance and accommodation obligations and what's an undue hardship. The employer can decline an accommodation if it's an undue hardship, but there's very specific standard there that employers have to know and understand and meet if they want to challenge an accommodation on the basis of undue hardship. So we spend a lot of time talking to the clients about those issues and trying to navigate those lead laws to help them to avoid claims and disputes with their staff.
All right, let's shift gears a little to the pay transparency laws. Give us an overview, and I'll probably have some questions there.
Sure. So Massachusetts, like a number of other states across the country, has elected to adopt pay transparency, and we're going to have a similar law here in Massachusetts to other states like California and Colorado and the like.
New York,
but basically, what pay transparency is an effort to disclose what jobs, the pay range of jobs, and the mindset behind it is pay equity. It's the idea that we need to ensure that women and minorities are paid on the same level as Caucasian males.
Mm-hmm.
And that still remains statistically unequal,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just a reality. And so these laws have been implemented to try to diminish the disparity that exists. And the thought process is that if you disclose what a job pays and you lay it out on the table, that people will eventually all earn equal pay for equal work. So the pay transparency law that Massachusetts is adopting requires any job posting to include the salary range or the hourly rate range for that position. Employers will also be required to, on request from an existing employee, give them the pay range for their job.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a new job that they want to aspire to or get promoted to, they can get the pay range for that job.
So when you say range, there's still some negotiation there. It's just, in fact, a range.
Right. The employer can put out what they pay from the lowest level to the highest level of that position.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that takes into account the fact that some people in the position will have been there longer, will have more experience, perhaps be bringing more to the table, and therefore they get paid a little bit more than people on the lower end that have less experience, haven't been there as long, or maybe aren't bringing as much to the table. But they want the employer to lay out that range.
I imagine that's difficult to justify, maybe document those differences, right? As you say, bringing more to the table, bringing less, longer in the position, less long.
Yeah, well, I think it's critical that the employers have a pay range that they can support and document. So while it is potentially difficult, they do want to have backup for why they pay this low on one end and this high on the other end, because it could be challenged on it. And again, pay equity requires you to pay at a fundamental level equal pay for equal work. So if you're going to pay somebody doing the same job as another at a different level, you have to be able to justify the difference. And it obviously can't be based on gender or race. So you have to show that it's based on certain other factors that are business related.
Well, we got to wrap this up, but it sounds like there's more, what's the word? More justification for even some of the training you do to make sure that people are doing this correctly. You provide resources and training, and not just protection when it happens, but preparation to avoid it from happening.
Right. We've got an audit service that we do. We audit people's payroll practices and try to give them recommendations for how to pay consistent with the laws that apply. So it is something that we train them on. It is something that we audit and help them to put in place. So because it is difficult, and the claims can be expensive if you do get sued for these kind of things.
All right, last two questions, both very quick. Who in the listening and viewing audiences should reach out to you and why?
Well, so anyone that owns a business and has employees is a potential client of ours. And if they have HR, that's fine. If they don't have HR, that's fine. We work with companies that have no HR, companies that have HR, companies that have in-house counsel. We work with all different roles and all different kinds, because our specialty is employment law, and there's constant evolution under the law, and we stay on top of it so the clients don't have to. So anybody that's worried about compliance with the various laws and the changing laws and that has employees, we can help them.
Excellent. And last question is simple. There's information that's gone across the crawl for everybody. Best way for people to reach you is email or phone. What would you prefer?
I mean, either way. Email, obviously email is the current preferred method of communication. So email would be fine. But if people prefer to pick up the phone and give me a call, I welcome it. I enjoy talking to people on the phone. So
sounds good. Sounds good. Well, Tim, thank you very much. I know you're busy. Appreciate you taking the time and being here.
It's been fun, Kevin. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And thanks everybody for watching and listening. As most of you know, this is a show about business and often business challenges. If you've got concerns about the growth of your company, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, and that's at Winning Business Radio. You can drop me a note, one of my many email addresses, kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. Our company's Winning Incorporated, part of Sandler Training. We develop sales teams into high achievers and sales leaders into true coaches and mentors. We're not a fit for everybody, but hey, maybe we should have a conversation. Thank you once again to producer and engineer Juan. Thank you, Juan, for another job well done. Be sure to join us again next week that's Monday, October 7th. My guest will be Evan Poland, president of business development provider Poland Performance Group. Until then, this is Kevin Hallinan.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.